Phil Mickelson is facing a reported family lawsuit aimed at removing the Mickelson name from businesses connected to his legacy. At 56, the six-time major champion is no longer battling bunkers or brutal Sunday pins. He is fighting over whether his own surname can remain part of the empire built around it. Apparently, family loyalty becomes a movable hazard once money, ownership, and brand control enter the clubhouse. What triggered this deeply personal challenge? Who could control the businesses afterward? And how much of Mickelson's legacy is truly at risk? Subscribe as we follow the legal fight beyond the fairways. Then decide, should any relative have the power to take away the family name? The dispute strikes at something more valuable than a company sign. Mickelson is not merely the word printed on paperwork. It is the identity attached to 45 PGA Tour victories, 6 major championships, 3 green jackets, unforgettable recoveries, painful collapses, and one of golf's most complicated modern careers. That history gives the reported lawsuit its emotional power. Ordinary business disagreements concern percentages, contracts, and who signs the checks. This one concerns whether Phil can continue using the name that followed him from a left-handed child imitating his father's swing to a global sports figure known almost everywhere as Lefty. The public information surrounding the reported family challenge remains limited. No responsible verdict can be delivered without the actual complaint, the named businesses, the ownership agreements, and the relatives' legal argument. Those missing details are not boring paperwork. They decide whether this is a serious claim over jointly controlled assets or an aggressive attempt to turn private family tension into commercial leverage. Still, the central threat is easy to understand. A famous surname becomes valuable when customers connect it to success, trust, entertainment, or status. Once that name appears on companies, products, appearances, licensing agreements, or promotional ventures, family identity and commercial property can begin occupying the same scorecard. That is where relationships become dangerous. One side may believe the name belongs naturally to the family. Another may argue that Phil created most of its commercial value through decades of golf achievement. Both can claim emotional ownership. Only contracts, trademark rights, corporate records, and a court can determine who controls particular business uses. But here is what makes this fight more brutal than a normal business lawsuit. Even if Mickelson wins legally, the family damage may already be impossible to repair. Phil's career has always depended on bold choices. Sometimes the gamble produced magic, like the towering 6-iron from pine straw on the 13th hole during the final round of the 2010 Masters. Sometimes it produced disaster, like the driver into hospitality tents on the 72nd hole of the 2006 U.S. Open at Winged Foot. This battle offers no heroic recovery shot. Court filings preserve accusations. Financial records expose private arrangements. Depositions force relatives to answer questions under oath. Even a settlement can leave both sides believing they surrendered something sacred. Golf crowds eventually forget a double bogey. Families rarely forget who called the lawyer first. Mickelson also enters this reported dispute with a reputation already shaped by controversy. For years, he was the smiling rival to Tiger Woods, the adventurous fan favorite who signed autographs and attacked pins other players avoided. Later, gambling disclosures, sharp criticism of the PGA Tour, and his move to LIV Golf changed that comfortable image. His LIV decision turned Phil from beloved entertainer into one of golf's central culture war figures. Supporters viewed him as a player challenging an established system and demanding greater control over media rights and earnings. Critics saw a superstar accepting Saudi-backed money while helping fracture the professional game. Either interpretation proves the same point. The Mickelson name carries enormous attention. Attention creates value, but it also attracts conflict. Any family business using that surname benefits from recognition built across televised Sundays, major championships, sponsorship campaigns, and decades of public fascination. Phil's record supplies the foundation. He won his first PGA Tour title as an amateur at the 1991 Northern Telecom Open. He captured his first major at the 2004 Masters after years of painful questions about whether he could close golf's biggest tournaments. Further Masters victories arrived in 2006 and 2010 alongside the 2005 PGA Championship and 2013 Open Championship. Then came Kiawah Island in 2021. At 50 years old, Mickelson won the PGA Championship and became the oldest men's major champion in history. That achievement did more than add another trophy. It renewed the brand of lefty as golf's fearless survivor, capable of producing theater long after age supposedly closed the door. When a name carries moments like those, removing it from a business is not cosmetic. It can alter customer recognition, sponsorship value, search visibility, merchandise appeal, and the story the company tells. A replacement name may preserve legal operations while destroying the emotional connection that attracted people. Imagine Augusta National removing every reference that makes the Masters recognizable, and then insisting the tournament remains unchanged. Technically, golfers would still hit shots. Emotionally, the identity would be wounded. Famous names function the same way inside athlete-driven businesses. The letters are simple, the associations are priceless. The relative's possible argument deserves fair consideration. A surname is shared by birth, not awarded through a leaderboard. If a family member helped establish a company, invested money, contributed labor, accepted risk, or granted permission under a particular agreement, Phil's fame would not automatically erase those rights. Likewise, businesses cannot always treat a celebrity's identity as permanent inventory. Ownership depends on what was transferred, licensed, restricted, or retained. A company might own a trademark for specific goods, while the individual preserves broader rights to personal identity. Another agreement might limit how either side can use the name after separation. Without the underlying documents, anyone claiming to know the final outcome is reading a green without seeing the slope. The reported effort could seek a narrow change affecting selected entities rather than banning Phil from using his surname everywhere. Legal headlines routinely turn a dispute over defined commercial rights into language that sounds like somebody is losing their identity card. Yet narrow legal language can still carry enormous consequences. If the businesses depend heavily on Phil's reputation, removing Mickelson may reduce their value immediately. If Phil depends on those businesses to preserve a post-playing career, losing control could limit how he markets appearances, instruction, hospitality, merchandise, or future golf ventures. The real power struggle is therefore not over 8 letters on a sign. It is over who gets to convert Phil Mickelson's lifetime of achievement into money after the final putt drops. That question becomes more urgent at 56. Mickelson's competitive future is shorter than his history, regardless of whether he continues playing. Athletes eventually move from earning primarily through performance to earning through memory, access, licensing, storytelling, and the commercial value of what they accomplished. For Phil, that transition is unusually complex. His relationship with the PGA Tour broke down publicly. His LIV golf role attached him to High Flyers GC and a rival league whose long-term shape continues to evolve. Sponsors that once surrounded him reassessed their relationships after his controversial remarks and extended absence in 2022. The family name could therefore become one of his most stable remaining assets. Tours change, teams rebrand, sponsorships end. A surname connected to 3 decades of championship golf can survive all of them, provided the person retains the practical freedom to use it commercially. That explains why settlement may be harder than outsiders expect. Money can be divided, shares can be purchased, buildings can be sold. Control of a legacy is emotional because neither side wants to feel like the other is rewriting family history or profiting unfairly from sacrifices made behind closed doors. Conversely, Phil can reasonably argue that customers recognize Mickelson because of what he achieved under pressure. He struck the shots, absorbed the criticism, lost majors publicly, rebuilt his game, and returned to win. Nobody else carried the surname up Augusta's 18th fairway while thousands roared. There lies the conflict's emotional center. Shared blood created the name. Phil's career transformed it into a global golf brand. If both statements are true, neither side can dismiss the other without making the courtroom battle uglier. The harshest public reaction will likely divide along familiar lines. Mickelson loyalists will see another attempt to exploit a legend during a vulnerable stage of his career. They will ask why any relative should benefit from the name's commercial value while simultaneously trying to remove it from businesses. Both reactions contain truth and convenient exaggeration. Phil's career matters because it created much of the disputed value. Still, popularity cannot cancel legal promises. The relative's family connection deserves empathy, yet family status alone does not prove control over businesses or branding. That is why evidence must drive the final verdict. Which entities use the Mickelson name? Who formed them? Who owns the shares? Did Phil license his name? Was permission limited by time, product, territory, or behavior? Can that permission be revoked? Did either side violate a duty or agreement? Each answer changes the case. If Phil retained clear naming rights, the relative's effort may collapse quickly. If a family-controlled company owns valid trademarks or contractual permissions, Mickelson may face a difficult negotiation. Should the paperwork conflict, years of litigation could follow. And here is the possibility neither side can ignore. The businesses may lose regardless of who wins because customers rarely trust a brand whose owners are publicly fighting over its identity. Legal victory can arrive after commercial defeat. Suppliers become cautious. Partners delay agreements. Employees wonder who controls tomorrow's decisions. Potential investors reduce valuations because uncertainty carries a price. Meanwhile, every headline connects the company not with golf excellence but with family fracture. The relative must therefore calculate whether removing the surname protects the businesses or damages the very asset under dispute. If Mickelson disappears from the branding, independence may increase while recognition falls. Winning control of a weaker company is the corporate equivalent of celebrating a perfect drive that lands behind a tree. Phil faces the opposite calculation. Fighting publicly may preserve his legal rights while exposing private tensions and financial arrangements. Settling quietly could protect the family from further embarrassment but require concessions that limit future opportunities. Neither option delivers a clean scorecard. His public image raises another complication. Mickelson has survived extraordinary reputational swings. Fans adored his aggressive style, mocked his major collapses, celebrated his breakthroughs, questioned his gambling, condemned or defended his LEV move, and then watched him finish second at the 2023 Masters at age 52. That resilience suggests the lawsuit alone will not erase his legacy. Golf history will still record 6 majors, 45 PGA Tour titles, and the oldest major championship victory. Businesses may change names, but tournament results cannot be redrafted by a relative, corporation, or angry boardroom. Commercial legacy is less secure. Future generations often encounter retired athletes through academies, foundations, courses, merchandise, media projects, and branded experiences. If Phil loses access to businesses designed to carry his name forward, the public presentation of that legacy could be controlled by others or divided into competing versions. That scenario would be painfully ironic for a golfer whose career was built on imagination. Mickelson became famous for seeing shots others could not see. Now, creativity may be restricted by licensing language, ownership clauses, and definitions drafted long before anyone expected the family relationship to break down. The path toward resolution has several possible turns. A judge could reject the relative's request. Phil could negotiate a license allowing continued use under defined conditions. One side might purchase the other's interest. The companies could rebrand while Mickelson retains his personal commercial rights. Mediation offers the least destructive route. A neutral professional could separate emotional grievances from legal interests and help both sides create boundaries. Phil might retain the surname for golf-related ventures, while family businesses receive protections in other categories. Financial terms could recognize past contributions without forcing either party to surrender identity completely. That solution sounds sensible, which is precisely why family disputes often avoid it until tremendous damage occurs. People do not enter these fights carrying spreadsheets alone. They carry old arguments, perceived betrayals, unequal attention, and memories of who supported whom before the money arrived. For Mickelson, humility may matter more than courtroom aggression. The swashbuckling style that thrilled galleries is dangerous in negotiation. Attempting a miracle through a narrow gap could produce another iconic escape, but family law and business litigation punish unnecessary risks far more consistently than Augusta's pine straw. The relative also faces a legacy decision, becoming the family member remembered for trying to remove Mickelson from Mickelson-branded businesses carries a permanent public label. Even a justified legal position can look vindictive when reduced to a headline. Winning the case will not guarantee winning the family's respect. So one question now decides the entire fight. Is the name being protected from misuse or weaponized to seize control of the value Phil created? Until documents and rulings provide an answer, the responsible conclusion must remain focused. The reported lawsuit represents a serious potential challenge, not proof that Phil has already lost his surname, businesses, or commercial future. Removal from selected branding would not erase his legal identity or golf record. However, dismissing the threat would be equally foolish. Names are central assets in celebrity businesses. Control determines who can approve products, sign partnerships, collect licensing revenue, and define the public story. Losing that authority could reshape Mickelson's life after competitive golf. At 56, Phil is protecting more than income. He is protecting the bridge between what he accomplished and how those accomplishments will be remembered. The trophies belong to history. The businesses influence what happens next. The relative may possess legitimate contractual concerns. Mickelson may possess stronger personal and commercial rights. Only evidence can separate those positions, yet both sides should recognize that destroying the name's reputation to gain control of it would leave everyone holding a damaged prize. Phil built his career by accepting risks other golfers avoided. This time, restraint may be the bravest play. A fair settlement could preserve business value, personal dignity, and enough family trust to prevent the surname from becoming shorthand for betrayal. Should compromise fail, the courtroom will decide ownership while the public decides legacy. Judges can interpret contracts. They cannot order fans to respect the winner, restore broken relationships, or make a rebranded company feel authentic. Mickelson has escaped forests, bunkers, collapses, scandals, and career predictions before. Escaping a family lawsuit may prove harder because the opponent knows the history behind the public smile and may believe part of that history belongs to them. Comment lefty if Phil should fight to protect the name, or family if shared ownership must come first. Subscribe as we follow what this battle could mean for golf's most unpredictable legend. Phil Mickelson spent decades making his surname valuable. Now the cruelest contest may determine whether he still controls what that name becomes.